as the owner and winemaker of my winery involves being a grape grower as well. So in my vineyard, I supervise all the operations. I have the help, of course, of crews that come in to do the major operations of removing leaves, of shoot tucking, pruning, and of course during harvest. I determine when the grapes are to be picked. I take careful measurements of sugar and acid and decide the right time to harvest Pinot Noir grapes. When they're brought to the winery, I it's myself and just one other person. The two of us make the wine. So after all of these years, I'm still a hands-on winemaker, and that's what I enjoy the most is making the wine. So I get dirty, I get grape juice on me, and I supervise and do actually a lot of the manual labor. So we punch down. We're a small winery, so everything's done by hand. We do have a machine for destemming the grapes, and we have a wine press for pressing the juice. But other than that, we do everything by hand. And that goes through the entire process of winemaking, through the barrel aging, the filtration, and the bottling of wine. We do everything here by hand. My philosophy of making wine is that wine should be a good companion with food. So I try to balance my wine so that they're good companions with food. But of course it varies by varietal. For example, with Albarino, I like to make that very classic Spanish style, so there's still a lot of acidity in the wine and lower alcohol. So it emulates the fine wines of Spain. The same thing with Pinot Grigio. I like to make it very crisp, very light, refreshing wine to go with easy meals. On the other hand, with red wines, I like to make them so that they age for a long time. A lot of my red wines aren't that easy to drink in their youth, and so they need bottle aging. But basically, my style is to respect the purity of the grape. I don't like to manipulate my wines. I don't like to use too much oak. I want the fruit of the wine to be the dominant character of the wines. I'm very transparent in my winemaking. I don't have a style. I am transparent. In other words, I sort of back off as a winemaker and let the grapes speak for themselves. So in that sense, I don't make designer type wines. There's a very prominent style of winemaking in California that is to seek high scores and to sell for a lot of money. But those wines typically are designer, what I call designer wines. And they usually don't respect the terroir where they come from, because they're just designed to please critics and certain people that like expensive wines. So mine's the opposite of that. I like to make wines that represent, again, the varietal and then the soil and climate where they come from. I first came to this wine region in 1976. I had started my career up in Sonoma County in 1974 and learned about the new wine industry here in San Ynez Valley, and I was very much attracted to it. So I started working at the Firestone Vineyard in 1976 and came to know the region and the climate and the few people that were making wine back then. And I really felt there was something unique about this area. So I made a point to stay here. I did spend 1 year in Napa Valley, but then returned to start making wine here in 1979. And one of the unique aspects of our area is our transverse mountain ranges. Unlike all the other mountain ranges in the West Coast, our mountain ranges run east-west. And what that means is that we have unimpeded maritime influence coming in through our valleys. provides a lot of cooling influence for our wine region. And the effect of that is to have grapes that are very well balanced. We can ripen the grapes to full maturity and still retain a lot of the natural acidity because of our cool climate. And that really is important for me because my style of wine is to make wines that are balanced and have more of a European sensibility. And this is one of the few areas in California that provides me with the grapes that I can make that kind of wine. If I were in a hotter region of California, I would not have the same quality of grapes to be able to make a very balanced wine. So that's why, after all these years, I've been rewarded with that initial instinct that I had back in the 70s about our climate and our region. I started making Spanish varietals in the year 2004. I had the good luck of being able to plant some Albarino and Tempranillo at a small vineyard in Santa Ynez Valley. And I just love the wines from Spain. I travel to Spain frequently. And on one of my last trips to the Catalonia area of Spain, I discovered the young winemakers starting to use amphora, which is a very ancient vessel for storing wine and for fermenting wine. And I found that fascinating. So I was able to bring back, import 2 different amphoras from Spain. And I ferment Albarino and Tempranillo in those amphora. And of course, it makes for a very different wine. And so I do blend the wines that I ferment in the amphora with the wines that I ferment in stainless steel. So it makes a nice complex wine. But I love the traditions of old winemaking, and obviously in Spain the young winemakers are bringing very ancient practices and ancient vessels, bringing them back. So what was old has become new.